Good afternoon. I'm Phil Owen with Communities for Recovery. I'm a peer recovery coach for the Targeted Response Team. Today I have my guest, Alan Jones with Actions Wellness. Hey, Alan, how are you doing, bud?
I'm doing great, Phil. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate the platform.
Oh, man, I couldn't do this without you, man. I had to have my Alan Jones on here to let everybody know what's real and what's going on. Hey, Alan, can you give us a little bit of background so the audience can know a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, sure. So I got into the recovery world when I was 39 back in 2006, and I bounced in and out of the rooms of recovery and treatment centers for 20 years, better part of 20 years, and finally stuck and started on this journey. And have really been trying to carve out a niche in the recovery world as best I can. I started working, I got sober, like I said, in 2006, and then started working in the field in 2008. Went back to school and got a degree and became a counselor. So I'm a chemical dependency counselor. I'm also a peer recovery coach. Also do some life coaching and some skills coaching and active wellness monitoring plans.
Okay. What does an active wellness monitoring plan look like?
So it's a great question. It's really individualized work with regards to what a person needs rather than sticking them in a box. So if someone comes to us with the recovery need, absolutely we're gonna work in the recovery arena, but we also want to touch on total wellness. We don't just want to work on recovery specific. We want to go ahead and touch on other areas of life, because from what I know and my experience, and that's all I can give someone is my experience. But from what I know is recovery isn't just about staying sober. Recovery is a way of life, and yeah, so addiction, lifestyle, and mental health support services. It covers a whole gamut of things, not just recovery.
You know, it's interesting you talk about wellness. I think, we often mention that recovery is connectivity and addiction is isolation. I think sometimes as a culture or a population, the recovery community sometimes isolates ourselves just with the language we use. I think it's just an unintentional thing that happens. But, wellness kind of has a more universal language and recovery kind of has a specific language. I think sometimes when we're speaking to the community at large, we lose them in conversation. They get lost.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I think, the more we can open discussions around not just recovery, but total wellness, I think it does a couple of different things. I think it brings in a broader scope for the person at large, and I think it also helps with the stigma on some level. When I first got into recovery, and I remember, just how stigmatized that sort of language was, and I never knew any difference. I would tell people ad nauseum, I'm an alcoholic or I'm a drug addict, and those things, while I was well intentioned, I just didn't know any better. And through just education and through support of others, people like you and people there at Communities for Recovery, we're able to talk and sort of brainstorm on ways of changing our language a little bit so that we include more instead of exclude.
I think you would be willing to agree that we consider ourselves, our brothers in recovery, to be a very resilient bunch. We've been in
Amen.
we've been in the trenches. We've survived a lot. We're
Yeah.
this amidst the COVID-19 landscape, and I think about the recovery population. You know, we were made for this. We can endure a lot, but to sustain recovery, I believe it has a lot to do with connectedness. And staying connected with our peers sometimes is challenging, especially when we have social distancing. What are your thoughts on social distancing and staying connected and how that relates to recovery?
Well, man, that's a great point. For me and for the team here at Actions Wellness, we want to make sure that social distancing doesn't mean social isolation. You brought up a great point that the addiction piece proper has more to do with isolation, and I think that's a byproduct of it. I think that's the way I needed it to be, and we talk a lot about the term tribe. I need people in my life, and I need good, solid, quality people that I can count on and that I can lean on during times like this. You know, we are a resilient bunch, but we're a bunch together. I can't do any of this by myself, and so I need to try to find ways to again continue to reach out to folks, to open up and sort of brainstorm ideas with people like you and others in the field of how we can best stay connected, because it's really important to my personal recovery to be connected to my fellow, my tribe, and whatever I can do. You know, I don't just have to Zoom. I can go and still sort of meet with people, wear the mask proper, and still, you know, while I can't hug a neck, I can certainly keep my 6 foot distance and still see them face to face. And I think that's important for me, and I think it's important for others as well.
Right. So people that are receiving services from Actions Wellness right now, you are getting some one-on-ones, some actual real life one-on-ones, and not just Zoom connections and so forth.
That's right. Yeah, no, we're still getting out and we're still seeing our folks face. We do observe the proper distancing, and we do observe the rules of the city, county, state, et cetera. But I think during this time, trying to get creative and trying to see folks, and I think there's less distractions in some ways, and so. When we do get to sit down face to face, the time is spent, it's a little bit better quality time because there's not so many distractions. And I think it's easier to focus on getting some work done. And I think it's helpful in some ways.
Great. What do you think coming out of this, as we pass the peak, when we get to that point of a peak and we pass it, and we start to come into creating probably what will be a new normal? If you look into a crystal ball, what do you think that looks like? And did we gain anything from this?
I think we do. I mean, whether we know it or not, it's always kind of hard to tell when you're in it, right? So I think what we gain is a better understanding of to be conscious, to be more health conscious. I've certainly learned how to wash my hands. It's not that I obviously didn't know how to wash my hands, but certainly, with all of this going on, I'm able to be more cognizant and be more aware of the people around me. And I try not to be selfish anymore, but really, during all of this, find out how selfish I am, and the fact that I don't think about others the way I would like to think I think about others, if that makes sense. And so I think it's brought me to a point where I'm able to understand other people better, understand my own sort of quote unquote hygiene, if you will, and how to take care of myself, how to take care of my fellows. I think those are all important things. And you're right, as we move forward into this quote unquote new norm, I think there's going to be, I think on some level we're already starting to step out of this a little bit. Um, I'm no COVID expert by any stretch, but they think it's heat related, and the fact that we're here in Texas may give us a leg up, if you will, because it certainly gets hot here, and so if that's what helps sort of move us forward and propel us forward into our next phase, um, I think we're going to be ready for it. I think people are starting to, grow a little tired of hearing about all this stuff. Although it's great information, it can be overwhelming, and certainly looking forward to stepping back out again and being able to hug necks like I was talking about earlier.
So in the meanwhile, it certainly gives us pause to be able to stop and question and evaluate our own serenity and see how true it is, right?
I think so. I think so. Yeah, it certainly puts
So
it to the test, doesn't it?
that's right. That's right. So we talk about our recovery tribe. Let's pause for a second. And what frightens me are our brothers struggling. I know that when I was maintaining a habit, social distancing, physical distancing would have to be back burner priorities. Maintaining my habit was priority number one, above and beyond everything else I considered important in life. So it wouldn't matter how I viewed COVID-19. My habit would be first and foremost my priority if I was still using. And I wonder what, in other words, looking at the behind the scenes disasters, if you will. We're also hyper focused on COVID-19, but I know this has created a larger problem, or I feel it has created a larger problem of which the numbers won't be seen for quite some time now. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think you're right. I mean, I think it's going to be a long time before we really start to put our heads around what this is and what it's done. And I hear it. I'm able to get out, like I said, and have still continue conversations with local law enforcement. Certainly don't work with them, but in conversations with them, they're talking about how they're seeing a spike in the domestic violence calls. They're starting to, as chance would have it, because I'm home now more often, I'm able to see the garbage truck guys and wave to them and take some water out to them if they need it. But even they're laughing and chuckling about the recycle bins are full of just whiskey bottles and beer bottles, and just so I think you're right, man. I think the scope of what we're dealing with may not be felt for a long time, but I think some of that also goes to what we know, certainly from Phil knowing you the way I do. We've got a pretty good idea of what's going on out there, and it's unfortunate. Just from our own experience, and I want to speak really about my experience. I got a real good idea of what's going on out there right now, and it's scary.
Yeah.
So to be able to get back to some sort of normal and really concentrate, if I can, and let folks know that try to keep as much of a normal schedule as possible. Talking about a new norm, and there's certainly going to be a new norm. But if you were typically working an 8 to 5 Monday through Friday job, there's nothing that says you can't get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, still take a shower, get yourself dressed, and get over to a different part of the house from 8 to 5, and
Right.
keep that sort of routine as best you can. Um, I get it. It's a little stir crazy and can be a little mundane at times, but to try to keep as much of a normal, quote unquote, normal as possible, I think is paramount to mental health, to mental health well-being.
Well, we definitely have to focus on self-care and advocate for self-care for others. And that becomes trying at times. It seems like it's Groundhog Day every day. I think you're right. Connectedness is where it's at. And I'm so glad you're out there doing what you do. Alan, I consider you a heavy hitter on the front lines. So I'm going to throw you a fastball for the last question. If you could create your own flavor of ice cream, what would it be?
Oh man, that is so cool. How about that? Man, you know what I would do? I would try like a mint chocolate chip strawberry.
All right. That sounds awesome, and just in time for the summer.
That's right.
Summer flavor right there. Well,
That's great, man. I love that question. Hey, can I use that question?
What's that?
Can I use that question?
You absolutely can. So here's actionswellness.com. Mr. Alan Jones, it's always a pleasure speaking with you. And for everybody else, please like us on social media, Communities for Recovery. Give us a like, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and stay tuned for more recovery talk. And we will be seeing everybody soon.